and welcome to this all-new episode of the Fairfax Sports Report. I'm your host, Monica Moore, and we have a fantastic episode for you today with all of the news and notes and happenings with some of your favorite spring sports. But before we get to all of that, we want to thank the folks that help make this program possible. First of all, our good friends at CCI Screen Printing. For all of your screen printing needs, you can contact them at 703-978-0257. Also, Pressbox Video, you can get copies of episodes of this program as well as all the games we do throughout the region at www.pressboxvideo.com. And our sponsor for the spring, Triple Edge Lacrosse. For your endless summer of lacrosse, you can contact them at 703-392-6177. Don't forget to check out our website at www.fairfaxsportsnetwork.com, where you can check out our video vault feature that has some highlights and interviews from all different types of sports throughout the region. And finally, don't forget to become a fan of the Fairfax Sports Network on our Facebook page. All right, well, lots happening in the spring sports world, and before we get to all of that, we want to talk about a couple of news and notes throughout the region. First of all, congratulations to Bill Lapthorne. He is the new head coach of the Marshall football team. He will be replacing J.D. Biddison. Of course, he first came on the scene in the region at South Lakes as one of their offensive coordinators. He moved over to Marshall as an assistant coach, and now he will be the head coach next year. Of course, Biddison going over to West Springfield to replace Bill Renner next year. Also, congratulations to Stephanie Paradise from Stonebridge. Of course, I talked about her a lot during the cross-country season. She's one of the outstanding runners over at Stonebridge. She has received a full scholarship to run cross-country and track at Richmond next year. And then finally, congratulations to Brennan Miller, a pitcher for the South County baseball team. He had a no-hitter a couple weeks ago. It was the first in South County's history since their baseball program started in 2005. Okay, well now we're going to move on and move into our Triple Edge Boys Lacrosse segment, and I am delighted to be joined in the studio by Dennis Stewart, our lacrosse expert for the spring. Welcome, Dennis.
Very excited to be here. It's going to be a great season.
Well, lacrosse, of course, already underway. Lots of games have already happened, and the coaches get together and put together this poll every week and tell us what they think the best teams in the region are. The
coaches have done a great job voting. They vote with me every week, and we would like to put it out on Wednesdays. Right now we've got Chantilly in the top spot. They undefeated last year, still carrying over. The Woodson team was strong as always, followed by Langley and Robinson and Madison, all knotted up in a bunch. Oakton at 3-2 looks to be one of the stronger teams. Annandale and West Springfield, probably the two top teams in the Patriot District, and Herndon and Westfield, again in that always tough Concord District.
And just talking a little bit about these teams, each team one by one. So first of all, with this Chantilly club, they lost so much from last year, but I think the key to their team this year is Krizek back there in the cage. He has been sensational. I think he had about 180 saves last year.
Yeah, he's an outstanding player. He's going to be headed to Lynchburg next year. The backbone of that defense returns. New young players playing on offense. And the thing that I get watching them is just a sense of confidence after going 21-0. Being patient and being able to bounce back when things go wrong. I think that team's going to go a long way.
And certainly one of the teams that people think could challenge them is this Woodson team. They've played some very tough competition early on, and they've really stood up to it.
Big win against Robinson, 10-9. Again, Coach John Fitzgerald at Woodson, very strong on the defensive end of the field. He's got some players on attack that can play. Paul Tunick, they've got enough players that they can really focus and bear down.
Tunick and Mayberry also last year, so impressive. I think they had about 36 goals between them, 31 assists. They are very impressive on the attack.
Mayberry's a classic time and space shooter. Very excellent. And I think Colangelo in the goal was really giving them a big lift too.
Lots of good goalkeepers in the region, too. I mean, Krizek is the one I think everyone's talking about because he's at Chantilly, and so much is being asked of him this year. But I completely agree that Colangelo is also another one of the top ones.
And in the number 3 spot, Langley with Kuhn in the goal. He returns. He's an excellent stopper, clears the ball well. That team has great defense and can definitely go after him.
And we're going to talk to Earl Brewer in just a little bit, but I think one of the things that people are probably saying about Langley right now is when you look at the teams that they've played, they haven't really played the top teams yet, so people think that they might not have been as tested as some of the other teams so far.
Well, that Concord district certainly will test them when they get ready to play Madison and Woodson. They'll definitely be tested.
And they do have Stonebridge coming up tomorrow, so it will be interesting to see what happens there.
Stonebridge has been interesting too because Stonebridge is kind of a bubble top 10 team. They started early, big scores against some teams that weren't quite as good. They played Madison in a big matchup and dropped that game. It'll be interesting to see how they respond and can they bounce back. But I have one coach who told me flat out he thought Stonebridge was the best team in the region.
Well, they certainly do have a lot of impressive players, both at midfield and attack, that people are keeping their eyes on. And so, I guess once we get down into the district tournaments and then, of course, the region tournament, anything can happen.
Those district, the Concord and the Concord district and the Liberty district tournaments look to be dogfights when we get to them.
And speaking of, so we've already talked about Woodson, we've talked about Langley, but you brought up Madison as well, which could make some noise in that Liberty District tournament.
Madison, Coach Hodge over there in his first year, his first win. He comes from behind 4 goals, scores a goal with 1.3 seconds left to win the game, and everybody's career should start like that. And again, they lost to Woodson last night, a very tough game, but that team could do a lot of damage down the road.
We've talked about a lot of the really impressive offensive players in the region, and when I talked to coaches before the season started, the big thing that they kept saying to me is Sobolski and Hayden over at Madison, that's a powerful, dynamic duo.
Two left-handed players. Sobolski is a bull and can run through things. Hayden is a great time and space shooter, gets open off the ball. Very cagey players, very good players.
And certainly they are being tested and battling with Woodson. That's probably a good game for them to have early on to see where they are.
Right.
And that measuring stick.
Well, again, that district is going to be a battle down when it gets time for the districts.
Now, one team that I feel like has kind of had a spotlight on it is Oakton, because not only were they the runner-up last year, but they lost head coach Gray. And I know that they had a big game, the Georgetown Visitation game, and it was a 20-1.
And Georgetown Prep, but Georgetown Prep, very good team nationally. That team has got kids going Division I all over the place. Georgetown Prep, one of the best teams in the country this year.
Well, and that's kind of Oakton's MO too. They always seem to play really tough teams, and then at the end of the year, they're in the mix. So
exactly.
Whatever it is working for them.
Coach always felt like that they wanted to play the toughest schedule they could, and Coach Will's stepping right up into Coach Gray's footsteps and doing the same thing. I think the team will have a little bit of a different personality. Coach Will tends to be a little bit more defensive oriented than Coach Gray was, but that's going to be a great team down the stretch.
Well, and certainly having Jack Tyler, if you're a defensive oriented coach, that's one thing that you really like. But Oakton, we talked about how Chantilly lost so many players, but Oakton lost some talent too. Are there particular people that you're looking to step up for them?
I think just as a group, they'll step in. They're growing into their roles through these tough games. And when the district tournament starts, they're going to be tough to deal with.
And of course, you alluded to the fact the Patriot District, it looks like the class of the district this year is probably going to be West Springfield and Annandale. And, one of the interesting things, as you well know, someone who spends a lot of time in the Patriot District, is that the Patriot District champion has bounced around a lot. And so it seems like it's always up for grabs.
It is. And, it is going to. Again, I think you're going to see West Springfield and Annandale battle for it. Annandale's got a young team.
Right.
West Springfield's a mix of guys. They've got a senior goalkeeper. They've got some seniors on defense. Sean Phelan, that's an excellent player. Their attack is getting a little bit older. That's a good group, a good mix of guys. That team has got a lot of talent.
And of course, those two teams have already squared off, and West Springfield won. I don't know if there are certain things you think that Annandale can take away from that, or that is helpful to kind of see that early on as we talked about the measuring stick and seeing where you are in the district right now.
I think a lot of these games are 2-3 goal games that if momentum swings the other way, it could be a different game come May.
And the one team I don't know that we did talk about was Robinson, and you talked about momentum and 1 or 2 goals going a different way. I mean, you look at their record, but 2 games decided by a goal.
Robinson's got a lot of firepower. They have a lot of very good shooters. As this team starts to gel, they're going to be outstanding. They've got a freshman playing on attack, Alex Barber, who's scoring 2 or 3 goals a game.
Exactly. I think it was against Chantilly. He had 3 goals, and then, certainly McNulty, who seems to direct traffic and set everyone up for these goals.
Seems like McNulty's been starting there for 7 years.
I'm sure there are a lot of coaches in the region that feel that way.
Exactly.
Well, now Herndon has made it into the top 10, which might have been a surprise. I have to admit, they were not on my radar before I saw them start popping up in the rankings.
Well, I know they've got some very nice players on attack. Mank, those guys set it up well. Again, that's a team that's been gelling, getting older. Coach Will's done an outstanding job there, and it's been fun. It's always fun to see a new name in the top 10.
Well, and then finally closing out another Concord District team. We've talked about how tough the Concord is, and Westfield had that big win over Oakton, and I've heard that they're much more of a defensive-oriented team this year too.
It seems, looking at their scores, very close scores. Again, a low-scoring game against Madison, a low-scoring game there. They're definitely, their defense is the heart of what they're doing over there. And big game against Robinson tomorrow night for them.
So that will definitely be interesting to see. They beat Oakton, but Robinson's certainly a different looking team, and so it's going to be a good one to keep an eye on. And that is actually our game of the week this week, and so we will be there tomorrow night for the big Robinson-Westfield match. Well, as promised, we now have on the phone Earl Brewer, the head coach of the Langley Lacrosse team. Coach, can you hear us?
Yes, I can.
Looks like a couple of technical difficulties here. So, Coach, can you hear us now?
Yeah, I'm here.
Fantastic. Well, thank you so much for joining us, and congratulations on your season so far.
Thank you.
Now, Coach, you guys recently played Thomas Jefferson, and the thing that I was really impressed about was so many different players scored. Can you talk a little bit about how your offense is gelling this year and how having so many different players who are threats is so important?
Well, I think to start the season with such balanced scoring, in the past we've usually our goals have come from our attackmen. We've had some great attackmen over the last 10 years come through the doors at Langley. But this year, I think we scored 45 goals, and it's pretty well balanced between our midfield and attack. And that's a good thing. It's a good thing that, they just can't focus on one player.
Coach Brewer, Dennis Stewart here. It's great to have you on. Tell me a little bit about your spring break trips plan. Tell me about the tournament you guys are playing in.
Well, Dennis, we're going to be playing in the West Springfield tournament, which Scott Setter and I got together and talked back in, September now, and we kind of got this thing together, and I hope it's going to work. We have some great teams that are going to be there. It's 3 days of just kind of nonstop lacrosse from 2 o'clock every day or 12 o'clock to 8 o'clock at night, and I hope it's something that catches on, and we can do it every year.
Looks like it's going to be a great tournament. Congratulations on getting that set up. Some good matchups there. Out of region, Loudoun Valley coming into play. That should be interesting.
Yeah, it should. I know, they're a good team. I've heard people think out of the Northwest, I guess, that they're one of the top teams. So, we're going to have the Potomac School is going to be in there. Cabell Maddox is going to have his kids ready to play. And as you mentioned, Herndon before is going to play as well as West Springfield, and Broad Run also is in there. So there's really some fine teams are going to play in this tournament.
Well, that's outstanding. Coach, I know you kind of eased into the start of the season. Tell us a little bit about who's been excelling for you, guys who are stepping into new roles, guys who are really starting to play for you.
Well, we like mentioned, we've had a lot of balanced scoring. My attack so far with Ryan Ningard and Kyle Maida and Ethan Bailey has been a new addition. Ethan was not at Langley last year. He spent the year at a private school. He came back to us. He's just been outstanding for us at attack. At midfield, it's kind of the people that some of the suspects I think that people thought we'd have: Alex Devlin, Matt Cronin, Charlie Sharfin, and we were lucky again to get another transfer, a kid named Joey Byrne out of Gonzaga. He's back at Langley, and he's an outstanding mid. He's a big, strong guy. And between Joey and Matt Cronin, I think we're winning 75, almost 80% of our face-offs. So it's kind of we're scoring a goal and getting the ball right back again. So we like playing that way, Dennis. It makes the game a lot easier.
Well, it's nice to see that transfer road works both ways, and it's not just public schools leaving to go to the privates. That it's some private players coming back to play in the publics.
Well, in the past we've had some great kids that didn't seem to come our way, that live in McLean or Great Falls, and they end up going to Prep or Landon. And it's hard to blame them sometimes when schools like that get to play 20, 25 games a year, against the Baltimore schools and the New York schools. It's hard to blame them, but, we think we got a good product at Langley. It's a wonderful school. It's one of the best public high schools in America, and we're just glad to get some of these guys staying home now.
Coach, we talked about your goalie. We know you're real strong between the pipes. Why don't you tell us a little bit about your keeper?
Well, Galen's been a 3-year starter for us. He was first-team All-District last year, second-team All-Region. I think you hit the nail on the head, Dennis. He is a great clearer of the ball. He thinks on his feet. He very rarely ever throws a bad outlet pass. And he'll clear it himself. If he sees an opening, he's not afraid to take the ball up and go across midfield. But he makes it easy. He realizes that he's just not a goalie. He's a lacrosse player out there. And Galen does good things. He's not going to hurt you by making mental errors. And he's tough between the pipes. He's as good as anybody we've had at Langley in the goal.
And that district is shaping up to be a real battle. That three-way battle last year ended up three-way tie. Is it possible that's going to end up happening again this year?
Well, geez, and I wouldn't even count out some of these teams are going to battle for that other position too. I got a chance to watch Stonebridge play last night against TJ, and they're an exciting team. They kind of almost play the same way we do. They get up and down the field. They play good defense. And I know South Lakes. They've had a couple tough losses, but Matt's done a great job with that program over there, and I think the Liberty District really is going to be a battle from top to bottom this year. It's a tough division, and last year we lost the coin flip, and we ended up, even though we were tied for first, we ended up third going into the playoffs, and luckily we came out and managed to win the championship. So I'd rather not have to flip a coin this year, Dennis.
Flipping a quarter is a tough way to get the top draw.
I've never been very good at flipping quarters either, so I'd rather have my kids decide our fate on the field.
Exactly. What have you seen from some of the other teams in the region out of your district?
Well, I've seen Chantilly play twice now, and the old saying that defense wins championships is just true with them. They have a great keeper. They play such pressured defense. They don't make mistakes on that end of the field. They're not scoring a lot of goals, but if you got a keeper like they do and a defense like they do, I don't think you have to score a lot of goals. You get 8 or 9 goals, they're going to win most games that they're in. I think last year going into the season, I really think after the first couple games, everybody said Chantilly was really the team to beat. And I'm not sure this year if you can say anybody's the team to beat. It really looks like there might be 7 or 8 teams out there that really have a possibility of winning the whole region.
It's definitely a wide open field. Now, Coach, you mentioned Chantilly. Now, I know you live out there, and I know you're very busy coaching your team, but you're also coaching your son's U9 team for Chantilly Youth, aren't you?
And I can tell you, Dennis, my friend Bob Walters, who's the defensive coordinator for Chantilly, it is so much harder to coach a U9 team than it is a varsity high school team. These little guys they keep you busy. They'd want to know when the water breaks are and when are we going home. And we're having a lot of fun with them, though, and it's fun to see. It's fun to be out there with my son because I spend so much time away from him. My wife, we always talk. She's a single parent during lacrosse season, but it's fun. I get a chance on the weekends to go out, and I'm really enjoying being with both my sons and watching them play.
Well, Coach, we wish you the best of luck for the rest of the season with both Langley and with your U9 team.
Well, thanks so much, and again, thanks for having me. It was my pleasure.
It was a pleasure, Coach. Thank you.
Take care, Dennis.
So certainly Langley, one of the ones that everyone's looking at, but I think Coach is exactly right. I mean, lots of people can step up, and Chantilly's got the bullseye on their back, but I think it's anyone's guess right now who are going to be the 2 teams when it's all said and done that play for the region championship.
I think there's going to be so many 2-3 goal games that a lot of these games can go either way, and there's a lot of exciting boys lacrosse left to be played this year.
Well, speaking of some of those good games, we want to highlight a couple of the games of the week that we've picked out, games that we thought were going to be good ones. Madison, we talked about that great Madison team squaring off against Stonebridge, and they got the best of the Bulldogs in that matchup, 16-9 for the Warhawks.
Like we said, Coach Mitchell's team out at Stonebridge started real strong, and that's the first big game they ran into. I think they'll bounce back and play some of these other teams tougher. They're a very dangerous team.
And then another one of our big games was the Chantilly-Herndon matchup. You see, Chantilly came out the victor, but I think Herndon playing them with just in one goal, that's also a victory for Herndon, in my opinion.
Herndon's been big in these games, and again, they're going to sneak up on somebody and win a big game here in that tough district.
I would not want to be in the Concord district this year, that's for sure.
I don't know that I want to be in the Concord district any year.
And then one more game to show you. Now, this was an out-of-district matchup. Woodson squaring off against Landon. Landon, we talked about the Georgetown Prep being one of the top programs, widely respected. Landon, also a very widely respected program, and Woodson played them pretty well.
Landon was the standard bearer here in Washington, D.C. and nationally for a long time. It's been a long time since the Northern Region team beat them. Actually, 1995, the Madison team did. But it was 2-2 at halftime. Landon got all they wanted from the Woodson Cavaliers.
All right, well, we're going to shift gears now. We've told you everything you need to know about the boys lacrosse scene. Now we're going to talk about the girls lacrosse scene. So we'll go ahead and give you a good look at what the Triple Edge girls lacrosse coaches poll looks like. And Dennis, no surprise that Chantilly's sitting on top.
No, and they're rolling through their scores. You see the scores of their games. They've got a big win. They got a 12-5 win over the number 2 Robinson team. So they're definitely put themselves at the top of the list.
And I think that's unsurprising because they did lose Christina Patton, but they've got back Brittany, they've got back Katie, which were their 2 top goal scorers last year. And between them, that was about 175 goals last year.
I think the thing that they're really hearing a lot about is that this is the first part of the season. You know, they stayed atop the charts last year too, but when it came tournament time, they stumbled a little bit. I think they really are guarding against that this year.
That's a good point, because certainly I know that hurt them. They were the number 1. Everyone had their eyes on them all season, and you're right. As soon as postseason rolled around, they did stumble a little bit. That
Robinson team at 2 has got a lot of great players on it. They've got girls going all over the country to play Division I lacrosse, and I think that they'll hang in. They'll be in it at the end. The Madison team, again, Allison Count's squad, rolling up some big scores in their games, and they're definitely a threat. Woodson, new coach, young coach, doesn't look like they've missed a beat there.
You know, I agree with you. I mean, first of all, about Robinson, one of my favorites is Megan Dunleavy, and everyone talks about her for her offense, but I was looking at something that in her first 4 games, she had 24 ground balls, or maybe 20 ground balls, 24 draw controls, and 9 assists. So she's doing the little things as well. It's just not the goal scoring for Dunleavy.
That's the dirty stuff. She's getting her hands dirty, she's doing the tough things, and it's going to make a big difference.
And then you brought up Madison as well, and Madison's like the best kept secret in the Northern Region, because that squad is really dangerous, and they've got a freshman on that team, Bison, I think, who has 18 goals for them. She's only a freshman, only going to get better, and so I'm very excited to see what Amanda Counts' squad is going to do.
Yeah, I think that team is going to, again, that district is going to be exciting to watch with Woodson there, and Langley's got a good team as well. It's actually always interesting to me how much crossover there is between the girls' top 10 and the boys' top 10. It's, you know, the Concord district and the Liberty district just battle it out.
I think that's a very good point. And Langley, you know, one of the things that's impressed me so far is that I think they're averaging about 15 goals a game, and they're averaging about 8 assists a game. And so more of their goals than not are being assisted, which has to be something that Coach DeSoma is very happy about.
And Coach DeSoma is one of those guys who likes to fly under the radar, but his scores are tough. They're starting to get some coverage out there, and it'll be tough to sneak up on people.
And with Maggie Kovacs on their team, I mean, she's certainly a name that people know. She's going to Oregon next year. I think she already has 21 goals on the season and 18 assists. So when you have a player like her and you have Elspeth McGarry backing her up, it's hard to stay under the radar.
Yeah, definitely. And next, the Westfield team. And again, their scores are impressive. They're doing a nice job to start the season. Coach Dwyer over there. He's got some players.
And he has always spoken so highly of Amanda O'Sullivan. She has been someone who has been so important for his program. I don't know what they're going to do without her.
That's a heck of a lacrosse family. Her brother is at Army now, playing as a freshman after a year at Army prep. It runs in the family.
Well, that's also always a story in lacrosse. It seems like that there are these lacrosse families, and families that seem to have all the kids play lacrosse and just excel at high levels.
Definitely, and again, and at 8 Stonebridge, showing that the lacrosse just keeps swinging further west as we go along. They've got some strong scores, and they've done a great job so far.
And speaking of the families for Stonebridge, I mean, Lauren Giusti, she's over there and has been so impressive. I was impressed with her last year as a sophomore. This year, she's picked up right where she's left off, and she's got Amy Rollins over there who's helping her out and giving her a lot of support, Rachel Pascal. So I think Coach Howard has to be really excited about what her team could do.
That team could be one to deal with down the stretch.
Now, we talked about how the class of the district in the Patriot for the boys was Annandale and West Springfield, and similarly for the girls, those are the two that are rising to the top.
Coach Hook at Annandale, Coach Pulick at West Springfield, certainly looking to be the class of that district, but I think we're going to talk about a bubble team that could surprise a few teams.
I think so. So stay tuned for the bubble team that we're gonna let you in on another one of the biggest, best kept secrets in the northern region this year. But finally, just another last point about that. We're also going to talk about Annandale and West Springfield's game in just a minute and let you know how they matched up against each other this early in the season. But we won't keep you in suspense any longer. We will reveal the bubble team that is on the bubble of the coaches poll. Dennis, I'll let you do the honors.
T.C. Williams, a big game against Centerville. You don't expect a team from Alexandria to come out there in the heart of lacrosse country and beat Centerville 19-7. They've got the loss to West Springfield 10-7. Again, a close game. Big wins over Wakefield and Edison, and a win over Lake Braddock. This is a team. Coach Clatchery's got a transfer from Czechoslovakia, and she's on the U19 national team for the Czech team, and she's quite a player. And they got a big test this weekend playing Bishop Ireton, who's really been strong the last 2 years. So that'll be a thing that'll test them and make them better as they grow through the season.
And I think this is such a great thing in particular for T.C. Williams, because right in their backyard is St. Stephen's St. Agnes, which is one of the best, if not the best, program for women in the country.
It's neat watching, and you watch some of the West Potomac girls' scores. They're starting to win big too. There's so many girls in the Alexandria area that are playing lacrosse that it's not just going to be the private schools. The public schools are getting better.
And I mean, certainly you talked a lot about Anna Kopeka, who is the transfer student, but Coach Clatchery also has four four-year starters to back her up. So it's not just the transfer, but she's kind of been building this team, it seems like, for a very long time.
She's done a great job over there. She seems like a sharp young coach, and she really cares about her kids. And it's been interesting. Again, it's been neat watching those girls grow and that team get better.
So we've shown you what it looks like right now on the lacrosse team, but there was big news in the women's lacrosse team before the season started, because there were a couple of rule changes, and it's yet to be seen how these things are going to play out, but we want to highlight them for you because it could become an issue later on. And first of all, this issue with when yellow cards are awarded, the player must serve the penalty, but it's unclear, Dennis, how important that's going to be, since they can still have 7 defenders on the field.
It's not like you have to play 6-on-5 in the offensive end like you do in the boys' game. So it'll be kind of interesting. And sometimes I think it may be a thing that the referees may be more reluctant to make that yellow card call if it is going to determine it and get them out of the game and cost them a game.
Which is really interesting, because one of the biggest things that they were talking about before the season started is they're really trying to make the game as sportsmanlike as possible. The helmets issue has come up for the women, and so they're trying to keep the games really clean this year.
I was reading on a Long Island lacrosse blog where some of the scores in Long Island girls lacrosse, 25-23, 25-21. They're so afraid to defend and foul that the offense is running rampant.
But certainly for all the young players out there, you want to learn to defend with your feet, right? Right, Coach?
Not with the stick, not around the head. But it'll be interesting to see how the girls' game turns some of the next few years.
And then the other part of that is that the amount and the number of yellow cards awarded to an individual player could impact postseason honors. So even if you have 100 goals, if you have acquired a lot of these cards, it could be a question that comes up. We just don't know how important that's going to be.
Well, if you get a card and you have to miss a game, say you miss 1 or 2 district games out of 6 or 7, it's going to definitely have an impact on postseason honors.
So I have no doubt that that's going to be a storyline that we'll be keeping track of to see how these new rules play out as the year progresses. Well, as we did with the boys, we want to highlight a couple of the games of the week for the girls this year, because also a couple of good matchups throughout the region. First of all, Madison-Stonebridge, it was a little closer than the boys' score, but we talked about Amanda Counts' strong team and certainly coming out on top there, but don't count out Stonebridge.
No, not at all. That team that is a team to be reckoned with.
And then also Chantilly and Herndon squaring off. And Dennis, you talked about how Chantilly just scoring so many goals right now. It's just impossible to catch them.
Their scores every week, every game, they've rolled into their opponents. It'll be interesting to see who it is that slows them down. And again, the 12 goals against Robinson, probably the fewest goals that they've scored all season.
But certainly I think, again, you hit the nail on the head, because the thing for them is just going to be maintaining this level throughout the season.
Exactly.
And then finally closing out with what I think was probably the most exciting game of the week, the Annandale-West Springfield matchup. I know that West Springfield lost, but I think Coach Pulick had to be very happy with how well his team played.
Well, again, this is the class of the district, and it's a one-goal game. So as we get in down the stretch, that's anybody's ball game when they get ready to play it again.
And certainly with Rachel Tomlinson and Chelsea Capitz over there, they have so much firepower for West Springfield that's going to be a battle that I'm excited to watch as the season goes on. Okay, well, that is it for our Triple Edge Lacrosse segment this week. Dennis, thank you so much for joining us. And
thanks for having me. It was a blast.
We are going to take a quick break, and when we come back, we'll transition into soccer. Welcome back to the Fairfax Sports Report. Well, we have finished the Triple Edge Lacrosse segment, and we're going to transition into soccer. Lots of great soccer being played throughout the region, and now these teams getting ready to have a break. There will be spring break happening. Some teams go off and play in tournaments. Other teams use that time in order to nurse injuries going into the second half of the regular season, or also just to improve upon some things that the coaches have picked out and have been having trouble with. But a great thing that they have spring break in order to do this. Of course, I guess the basketball teams have Christmas break, and the football teams and the fall sports teams have the fall break, but a great opportunity also, I think, to go and play some teams from outside of the region, even outside of the state. I know that Woodson is getting ready to go off and to travel and play in a great tournament out of state, because you do get to see that competition. And while this is certainly a lacrosse hotbed throughout the region, certainly lots of other great lacrosse being played throughout the country. Well, let's transition into soccer and take a look at my soccer ranking so you can see where we are right now in the soccer season. So Robinson's still on top. You see them there. Actually, I think they're now at 4-0 and then 1 on the season. That big tie to the number 2 team in my rankings. Woodson directly following them. Woodson having a very strong season so far. Of course, Warren Williams moving over to coach the Cavaliers and has to be very happy with what his team has done so far. And then third on the list are the Chantilly Chargers, and we are delighted to be joined on the phone by the head coach of the girls soccer team, Melissa Bybee. Hi, how are you?
I'm good.
Well, thank you so much for joining us. One of the big stories about your team so far this year is that you have most of your starters, or I think all of your starters, returning. Can you talk a little bit about what it's like to go ahead and have that much leadership and such experience coming into the season?
Well, it's really the first time in my coaching career that we've had all of our starters return, and it's pretty good for the kids because we added like 4 freshmen, but with the exception of those kids, it's pretty much just the consistency with our team that we needed. And we've got 7 seniors, and 4 of them are going to play in college, so it's definitely nice to have everyone back.
Now, you had a big win over Herndon to start out your Concord District season, and I know Herndon is a much improved team this year. Can you talk about the things that you think that your team did really well during that match?
Well, Herndon was really impressive, actually. They're a really young, scrappy, organized, well-coached team, and we were playing without one of our big-time starters, Cortland Bristol. She had a concussion, and really the team just pulled together. We went up 1-0, and, you know, Herndon was knocking on our door a little bit at the end, but we ended up scoring a kind of the the ending goal to go up 2-0 with 10 minutes to go, and they just really pushed through everything and came together as a team even without Cortland on the field. So it was nice to see everybody step up in her place.
Now, I know that you're now going to have a couple of weeks off. Can you talk about things that you're hoping that your team can focus on during that time to prepare for the second half of the regular season?
Yeah, I mean, we're really just, we've got about five or six practices before we play Fairfax, and we have a really strong defensive focus, as well as just a counterattack offense, just trying to get everybody on the same page and be able to mount some counterattacks for the really tough teams that we're going to be playing when we come back. So, I mean, we've got some good time, some time to rest, some time to heal, and then we'll just be working on, defensive stuff, and then just, trying to put everything together.
Well, you put the focus on defense. So I know that one of the things you guys seem to be splitting a little time. You have Lauren Janusko, of course, and then also Jess Stillwell, also two great keepers. Can you talk a little bit about both of them and the different things that they bring to your team?
Yeah, well, Lauren transferred in last year as a sophomore, and she's now a junior, and Jess is a senior, and Jess is really a great leader on our team. She's not the starting goalkeeper, but she's a really good athlete with probably the most competitive nature on our team. She just really competes. She wants to win. She cheers hard from the bench, and whenever it's her chance to get in the game, she really is excited and goes out there and just really gives it her all. And we haven't given up very many goals so far, and both of them have gotten a good amount of time. So it's really nice to have not just one but two keepers that can go in at any time and really be solid in the back.
Well, certainly when people talk about your team, they do talk a lot about Cortland Bristol, who you talked about a little early, and then Katie Menzie and Kristen Melchiori. But when I've been looking at the goal scoring for your team, it seems like it has been really well balanced. So can you talk a little bit about how important it is to have some other players really step up? And I know that having that well-balanced offense is so dangerous, especially when you get into the postseason.
Oh, for sure. Last season, I wasn't as happy with. We had a great ending to our season, but to begin the season, through the regular season, up until districts regionals, we really were having. Cortland was scoring, Kristen Melchiori was scoring, and we got some out of Katie. Katie's a real. Katie controls our offense. I mean, she's a great distributor. Doesn't score as much, but this season I've really put pressure on her to take more shots instead of passing the ball quite as much. But the rest of the kids, I've been hard on my midfielders and my other forwards as well. Just we need some balance in our scoring, and we do. We have. I don't have my stats in front of me, but Kelsey Harney has her second goal. She scored against Herndon. She scored the second goal. We've got a couple freshmen with 2 goals. We have multiple people that have scored. Cortland, I believe, is leading us with 7 goals, but when we have 3 or 4 or 5 people with 2 or more goals, it's nice. It's nice to be in with the Robinsons and Woodsons and Stonebridges that can have Oakton, that can have multiple kids scoring in every game. So it's really important if we're going to be successful in the postseason that we get more people scoring than just Katie and Cortland. And I think the team understands that.
Now, I don't know that you can call it a blemish on your record, but certainly you guys did tie with South County. Can you talk a little bit about that game and kind of your take on that game?
Yeah, it was, we tied 1-1. They have some very skilled players on their team. It was also a very rough game. They're a lot bigger and stronger than we are, and I think that kind of took us out of our game when there were a lot of fouls called in the game. In the first half, most of them were called on South County, and then in the second half, we started being a little bit more physical, and then we were getting fouls called. So I really think that their physical play took us out of the game just mentally. And that's something that it was actually a really good learning experience for us, because we talked about the mental side of things and, how to deal with it if, it's not exactly how we're used to playing. And not every team is like that, but they definitely have some very strong players on their team. But it was a little bit overly physical for us. That was the game when we ended up with 2 major concussions. Both kids are pretty much out right now, and then we had a couple other injuries from that game. Ended up with about 5 injured players in that game.
Wow.
So it was pretty rough, but it's a learning experience, and I think the girls are taking something out of it. And you give South County credit; they put in a nice goal against us, and that was it.
And last question, Coach. Life is always tough in the Concord District. It's a tough place to play. Of course, this year, Robinson, a lot of people talking about then Centerville has Jenna Richmond back. Can you talk a little bit about how your thoughts at this juncture about the Concord District and things that you guys have coming up on your schedule?
Yeah, I coached in the Liberty District for 10 years with Langley, and we always had 2, sometimes 3 good teams, but coming over to the Concord last season was definitely an eye-opener. There's really no team in the Concord District that can't win on any given night. You take even Herndon, Fairfax, they're normally towards the bottom, but they're fighters, scrappers. They really work hard. They're, Herndon's real well coached. Fairfax has one of the top keepers in the area. And then, of course, you have the perennial Robinson, Centerville, Oakton, Westfield. They're always loaded with players, and I think it's to our advantage going into the postseason when you play your district teams that are that tough, and then you have to go play out of the region, or out of the district, I apologize. And it showed last year when the Final Four in the region was 4 Concord district teams. I'm not sure if that had happened before, but the 4 of us were pretty strong, but I think the competition in the district certainly helps us in the long run.
Well, Coach Bibby, thank you so much for joining us, and best of luck to your team throughout the season.
Oh, thank you.
Okay, so you heard it from Melissa Bibby, the head coach of Chantilly. They're certainly anticipating that the Concord is going to be very strong this year. And going back so we can take another look at our Fairfax Sports Report rankings. Now, Robinson did actually square off against that tough Centerville team this week that I've been talking about, and they came out the victors, and it was actually a very convincing win for Robinson. So I know that that's something that head coach Jim Reich is very happy to see at this juncture in the season. His team playing and performing so well. It was a 5-1 victory for the Rams. Now Robinson squaring off against that scrappy Herndon team that Melissa Bibby talked about tonight. So we'll be interested to see what happens with that score as we move forward and see how that Robinson goes through the rest of the Concord District and then during the postseason as well. Now Woodson tonight, the number 2 team on my rankings, squaring off against Centerville tonight. So Centerville is going to try to rebound tonight, but against a very, very tough Woodson team, that's going to be tough for them to do, I know. But Jenna Richmond, I talked about her last week. She's one of the class in the region. She's such an outstanding junior, had that great freshman season, and then was out all last year with the knee injury. So people are very excited to see her back. Now, McLean was tied with Centerville for the 4th place position in my rankings. McLean, very impressive. They had a big win over Stonebridge on Monday night. It was a 2-1 win for McLean, and so I know that that's something they're glad to have under their belt in the Liberty District. Stonebridge struggling a little bit, but I've kept them in my rankings with Christy Rodriguez and Lindsay Henry. They're such outstanding players, and I really think that Stonebridge is going to be a force as we move on into the postseason. They're going to challenge McLean for the Liberty District, so I've kept them in the rankings. Be very excited to see how things turn out in the Liberty District. Well, we are going to shift gears now and go into boys soccer so we can show you what our Fairfax Sports Report boys soccer rankings look like at this juncture of the season. And the first thing that you are going to notice right away is that there is that big shift. You see that Robinson has taken over the number 1 spot from Westfield. Now, I talked with a lot of coaches at the beginning of the season, and a lot of them thought that maybe Westfield might even go undefeated this year. They're so good with Sean Mornon and a lot of people have very high expectations for him. Well, Robinson coming out the victor in their matchup this season, and so we're going to talk a little bit more about that. That's one of our 2 games of the week, but just to show you how it is that we ended up with Robinson moving up, Westfield moving down into the number 2 spot. And so going back to our rankings now, you'll see in the 3rd place position is Stonebridge. The Stonebridge Bulldogs having such an outstanding season so far, but you see that they also have acquired a number in the loss column. They had a disappointing loss to McLean, both the boys and girls soccer teams losing to McLean this week. And it was the Bulldogs' first regular season loss since 2007, so big loss for the Bulldogs, but still expect very big things from them. Did not feel compelled to move them down in the rankings. They got off to the quick start in that game. They actually scored the first goal off of a goal scored by Michael Herndon, but then McLean came back with a penalty kick, and then in the last minute and 1 second of the game, they had the game winner, and so a very big victory for the Highlanders, but certainly look for Stonebridge to rebound. In my opinion, they're one of the best in the region, and so I definitely want you to keep your eyes on them as we proceed through the season. Now you see a couple of new entries into the rankings. First of all, South County. Now you see they're very impressive there, which is at 6-0, but that was not the thing that impressed me about the South County Stallions. The thing that has impressed me is that every single one of those 6 games has been a shutout. And so you have to give a lot of credit to the South County defense because that is hard to do, and they've maintained it over 6 games so far. So give a lot of credit to the South County defense. I'm very excited to watch them and see how they continue to play as the season progresses. Now, the last team on my rankings, also a new addition. You see that Wakefield has popped up in the rankings. That one tie that you see there was to T.C. Williams. Of course, T.C. Williams has the outstanding Brian Frank on their team, and he is an amazing player that got lots of recognition throughout the region last year. But Wakefield did have a nice rebound win over Oakton last week. They won 2-1. A lot of people expecting big things out of Wakefield, so I've got them in the rankings. We'll watch their progress as the season unfolds. Well, I told you that our big game of the week, one of the 2 big games of the week, was that big Westfield-Robinson matchup, and you see that Robinson came out the victor 3-1. Now, Westfield got on the board first, but Alex McCumbee, who had not yet scored a goal in the season so far, caught on fire. He scored all 3 of those big goals for Robinson. Such a huge game for him. But also you have to give a lot of credit to his teammate, George Vanegas, who controlled the midfield. He was serving up plays for all of his teammates. He does for his soccer team what McNulty, who Dennis and I were talking about earlier, does for the Robinson lacrosse team. He's so important for them, and so you have to give him a lot of credit, even though he doesn't necessarily get the highlight that Alex McCumbee gets of the hat trick in that game. And then another note for Robinson, very important, they got one of their goalkeepers back, Samir Badra, who had been playing in Portugal with a couple of the professional teams there. He's a member of the U17 U.S. national team, so that's another huge addition for Robinson. I really look to them to be a fantastic team that's going to be in the mix during the postseason. Now, our second game of the week was an Edison-Washington Lee matchup. Now, Edison has also caught my eye because of their big win over Yorktown this week. They stunned the team that the Washington Post has ranked number 9, a huge win for them against Yorktown. And then I was also very impressed with their victory over Washington Lee. One of their players, Brian Morales, he's a right-footed player, and he had 2 left-footed goals during that game. So a great effort from Brian Morales. Edison playing very well right now, and their goalkeeper, Brian Mickey, who had the shutout against Washington and Lee. That was his 3rd shutout when you count the Yorktown game of the season, and so he's playing very well in goal. The defense is backing him up very well. And then another player that I want to mention, Mark Krizek, who people throughout the region probably know his name because he's another one of those tri-sport athletes who plays football, basketball, and soccer. Well, he was very important to Edison during that game. He had some great corner kicks for his team, setting them up on some plays. And so certainly the teams that people have been talking a lot about in the National District are Yorktown and Wakefield, but Edison making some noise, and so don't count them out of anything. Of course, they have a big matchup against Wakefield to come, so we'll see how Mark Burrick's Eagles square off against Wakefield. But lots of exciting soccer going on in the region. Of course, the weather causing some problems for some teams, and the spring break coming up. However, lots of excitement going on. Well, we are going to take a quick break, and when we come back, we are going to have our Fairfax Sports Report softball report. Welcome back to the Fairfax Sports Report. Now, I am delighted to be joined in the studio by our student intern, Rachel Cronin from Chantilly High School. She's going to be covering softball for us all season long. And Rachel, I understand that you just saw two of the region's powerhouses square off against each other.
I did. I saw two of the top region teams this year playing on Tuesday, Centerville Wildcats and Westfield Bulldogs. Westfield has a very young team this year. 4 out of their 9 starters are sophomores. During the game, Westfield went up to a quick lead at 5-0. Then Susan Slusher, a senior, hit a home run over the fence, giving the Wildcats a 6-0 lead by the 3rd inning.
Now, with that big lead, was Centerville able to wage a comeback?
Luckily they were. They had one of their powerhouse hitters, Victoria Texas Marvin, who has been a power player for Centerville since she was a freshman, hit a home run over the fence as well. The Wildcats seemed to scramble a little bit trying to get runs here and there, but in the top of the 6th, their junior Katie Sokol hit a line drive to right field, scoring 2 runs. Then 2 hitters after her, their senior third baseman hit another double, scoring 2 more runs, giving the score 8-8. With an overthrow at the plate by Susan Slusher, the same girl that hit the home run for Westfield, the score became tied. Then Centerville scored 2 more runs at the top of the 7th. Luckily, Westfield had 1 more at bat because they're the home team. And they scored 2 more, giving the score 9-9 with a tie game, leaving sophomore Frankie Martinez up to bat with a full count and 2 outs. Luckily, she hit a single and scored the winning run. 10-9 was the final score. After the game, I actually talked to Coach Farrington about it, and he said that the girls prepared the same as they do for every game for Centerville, that it was a big honor playing Coach Farrington, that because they're always rivals, the girls just had to remember to stay focused and do what they do best.
Well, it sounds like a great game. I know that that's always a fantastic one when those two teams match up. All right, well, we will be right back with more of the Fairfax Sports Report. Welcome back to the Fairfax Sports Report. Well, that's all for us tonight, but before we go, I want to thank our guests, of course, Dennis Stewart and our student intern, Rachel Cronin, and then head coach Earl Brewer from the Langley High School boys lacrosse team and Melissa Bibby from the Chantilly girls lacrosse team. Now, if you would like to be a student intern like Rachel, you should go on our website, which we'll give you that information in just a minute, and contact us because we'll give you a lot of background and then give you an opportunity to be on camera as well if you would like. Okay, well, before we go, as usual, we want to thank the folks that helped make this program possible, our good friends at CCI Screen Printing for all of your screen printing needs. Again, at 703-978-0257. Also, don't forget you can get copies of this show and all of the games that we do throughout the region at www.pressboxvideo.com. And special thanks to our spring sponsor, Triple Edge Lacrosse. For your endless summer of lacrosse, you can contact Triple Edge at 703-392-6177. Here's our website. If you want to contact us about being a student intern, go to www.fairfaxsportsnetwork.com. And of course, you can also see video footage of some of our interviews and highlights from sporting events throughout the region. Again, www.fairfaxsportsnetwork.com. And finally, don't forget to become a fan of the Fairfax Sports Network on Facebook. We'll be off next week for spring break, so join us again in 2 weeks for the Fairfax Sports Report.